you have the slide? Are you back yet?
Good evening. Welcome to this Mansfield Board of Education workshop, February 3, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Members, would you say here, please, when I call your name? Susanna Everett. Here. Martha Kelly.
Here.
Edith Allison. Here. David Latrico. Here. Catherine Paulus. Catherine will be joining us very shortly. Jeanette Picard. Here. Elizabeth Verge. Kelly Zimmerman. Here. Great, thank you very much. And now let's move on to the 2022-2023 Superintendent's Proposed Budget Review, Support Services, Special Education, District Management, Facilities, and Other.
Great. Thank you very much. So you have a set of slides in front of you, and you'll be able to see them on the screens around you, but I'm happy to be able to present the remainder of the line items of the proposed 22-23 budget this evening. We are going to focus first on special services and special education, and then we're going to cover all elements of district management, which include facilities and technology, as well as several other accounts. I'm going to do things slightly differently when we get to district management. I'm going to give you an opportunity to hear specifically about facilities and technology, and then we will go into the line items in the book. It seems to be confusing when we try to go back and forth. So, however, before we get to that, we're going to start with special services. And so that will be a process very similar to what you experienced last week. I'm going to invite Dr. Shamim Patwa up to the table, and we're going to be focused in a few moments on sections 5 and 6 in your budget book, if you have that handy. To get us started, I will remind you that this is the overall proposed budget. It is a 1.06% over the previous year. And as has been shared with you for the last 2 weeks, this slide shows you some of the major cost drivers, both the increases and the reductions in this proposed budget. Oops. So we'll move into student support services, and I'm going to let Dr. Patwa speak to these highlights, and then move us through a couple of slides, and then we'll ask you to open up your budget books.
Press this. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I will record that.
Good evening. Let me begin with addressing the addition of the school psychologist. So, as you must be aware, the need for mental health services and addressing student needs is not unique to Mansfield, but many districts are feeling it. All of our districts are feeling it at this point. So with that in mind, thinking about student needs is where we began this idea of needing the additional school psychologists. So part of the should I wait or okay? Part of the position. Well, I'll go through all the kind of roles that this position can serve. Family engagement being one of the most important. And all of these, as I'm going through this, keep in mind how much time and time-intensive work it is, any one of these individually. So collectively, you can imagine how much time is required for some of the skill and relationship development. So informal and formal counseling, crisis work, coordinating community outreach, home visits, supporting teachers in the classroom with, consultation, and then coordination with the care teams, as well as working with our district leaders on multi-tiered systems of support. And then really thinking, as we always do here, about where are the student needs. So being flexible. I don't want to define it so tightly that we can't flex where we need to and where the needs are. What I do know is that both the elementary school and the middle school will need this person. Informally, I was talking to the school counselors, and in their individual counseling loads, about 19% of it goes towards crisis counseling, 19% of their time. So you can imagine what happens on a daily basis. So I just want you to know that this is such an important role, and especially as we're coming out of, these 2 years. So next up, I wanted to, actually one more thing about that, because I know that last time you mentioned BCBAs. We do consult with BCBAs. We contract with EastCon, and they give us a lot in return. They're building capacity, they're training our paras, they are training our teachers. So we're getting a lot of skill for the targeted work that they're doing. In terms of outplacement, our outplacements have increased this year. We have, we think very mindfully, as you know, and as I've been here before, I've been able to say we have low numbers, and we still have relatively low numbers. But in the continuum of needs and least restrictive environment, certain students need more than we can provide here, with the intention that they will always, the goal is to come back to us. So outplacements have become much more expensive. The cost of transportation aside, the services that students receive, everything is costly. So you'll see that in this budget as well. One of the biggest, most exciting things in special ed right now is the new Connecticut IEP, and I'm sure at some point I'll be back up here to walk you through it. This will require training, skill development, and a whole new system that we have to interface with, and a whole new way of really thinking about our planning and placement team meetings. So that will be quite the task as we move into this spring and into the next year. And then again, ongoing family engagement. Our teams, all special ed staff, they reach out to families, they build relationships. We look at individual families and whether we have to have more frequent meetings to address student needs, just as parent meetings and collaborations. So that is a big hallmark, and I think it really serves both sides really well. So any questions with that? Or
for the new psychologist that you're proposing, I probably missed this. The teams are going to be distributed between the two schools in what numbers, or are there going to be floating positions? How do you look at this?
with the existing ones, are you saying how are we distributing?
Well, you have the existing, and then you're proposing a new one. So
One new person, 50% at the middle school, 50% at the elementary,
okay, so that's
at this point in time.
okay, floating. Thank you.
this isn't really budget related, but I'm wondering too about the thinking about family engagement. Do we still have our family engagement space in the new school?
We do.
That yeah.
The
Yeah.
Family
So
Resource Center.
that resource center. So hopefully that person will also help support
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
As you can see, the numbers in the table above, that is a snapshot in time. I can tell you from that point until now, we probably have a few more children that are either in the referral process or have been referred. So the relative numbers are higher than what we've had before, but again, they reflect student need. And teams really go through, once again, a thoughtful process of eligibility and whether we're meeting student needs. Thank you. So I'll begin on page 88, enrichment. 5. There are no proposed changes to the budget. Well, aside from the staffing. Page 89 is pre-kindergarten. The proposed budget is designed to maintain current programming. Page 90. Remedial math reading. Again, no proposed changes. Magnet school tuition is page 91. Fortunately, we're seeing a decrease in the number of students attending magnet schools. In fact, we've had students come back to us this year, which is really exciting. So I'm proposing a decrease of $35,000 in that budget line. Page 92, health services. And I just want to, once again, do a shout out to our school nurses. They are working extremely hard, and they have been doing quite a job. So the current budget reflects the decrease in staffing needs and no other changes.
As I look on page 13, it's 1.5 positions fewer for nurses. And here it's $6,600. So
Yeah, that incorporates the long-term sub we have now, and I think there'll be a reconciliation later.
Yeah, so the value that you see for the current budget is a value that was revised at the last financial, not the quarterlies, when you did the staffing salary transfers. Because this year we have, I think we had some staffing issues with nurses this year. And we had a nurse that resigned shortly before school began. So we've filled that position with a substitute. And so that position no longer shows up in the staffing line item. It got moved to substitutes. So that's why.
And page 93, professional development, no changes to the proposed budget. I'll move on to tab 6, special education. Line 90, page 99, special ed instruction. The proposed budget is designed to maintain current programming. Page 100, summer school. An overall decrease of $800, just based on a review of practices. Page 101, tuition payments to Connecticut schools. This is where you'll see the largest increase. 175,000 is proposed. Again, I want to remind you that costs of outplacement services have increased. And we do not take this lightly, so it really is thoughtfully reviewed before we outplace a student. Page 102, outside evaluations. I have an increase of 5,000 for the occupational therapy line based on a review of practices. Martha?
On 102, the same figures, of course, are in the summary by object on page 96. And the numbers, as I'm looking at them, don't agree. And they're like a physical therapist here is 75,000, it's 77 on the other page. Is there another place that this shows? You know, occupational therapy here is 80, it's 82 on page 1 and page 96. So there must be another spot that this shows in, so that would,
Yeah, what I can say is I operate on this.
I know the
Okay,
answer to
go
that.
ahead.
It's because the figures on page 96 include summer school. So if you remember, Shamim shared with you a summer school account just a few pages ago, and there were line items in there for occupational therapy and physical therapy
okay,
also.
that's the other spot.
That's the other spot, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Page 103, speech and language. You'll see a decrease based on the staffing needs at this time. Page 104, you'll see an overall reduction in the area of program supplies. Page 105, professional development. No changes proposed in this area. Special education administration on page 106. The current budget is designed to maintain current programming. And then transportation, you will see again an increase based on projected student enrollment.
And this is transportation for students who attend schools outside of Mansfield.
And just one more question. The addition of the psychologist, where does that show in here?
It wasn't incorporated in there, correct, Kelly?
Oh, okay.
Right. It's actually going to show in the district management page because it's a district-wide position rather than a departmental position. That's it's just the way finance decided to house it or to locate it. Any other questions about special services or special education?
I know this has been asked before, but we're doing everything we need to do. We're not just worried about the numbers, about keeping the budget low. You're getting everything you need.
Yeah, and
The kids are getting
A-
everything they need.
And I am very confident that if needs arise, we address them. You know, it really, I think this is one area where if services as dictated by an IEP warrant a certain number of hours and we aren't matching those hours, then we have to look at that. So, yeah, I think it is a very reasonable, thoughtful budget.
Great, thank you very much.
It wouldn't be for this year's budget, but you noted that we have an increase in students who need out-of-district services. Are those numbers increasing to a level where at some point in the future we may have to plan within the budget to provide some of those kinds of services within our own district?
To some extent, I mean, we are doing that with the ASD program within our elementary level. In terms of the outplacements for more behavioral needs, I was looking over 4 years, and while the beginning of the year might be 3 kids, we had a high of about 7 4 years ago, and right now we're at 5 outplacements. So, given the level of needs, I would say we're not there yet, but that is always something that I'm thinking about.
Will the state's new IEP paradigm, will that cause budget changes for us?
It won't cause budget changes as much as a need for additional professional development.
Which often means time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it. So we'll move on, and I will get us started on the district management accounts. So in district management, there are lots of things that are addressed. It's in section 4. We will get to section 4 after we hear from facilities and technology. But you will see that district management includes salaries and benefits, including substitutes, all of our technology expenditures, equipment, software, hardware needs, professional improvement. So not just the professional development, but the contracted allowances for people who study and get advanced degrees. Certainly all administration costs, including all costs for Board of Education, facility maintenance, which includes energy, transportation, and then some transfers to other programs, which I'll go over at the end of the presentation. But I want to start this evening by giving Alan Corson, the Director of Facilities, an opportunity to address you and to share with you first some of the highlights from the work of the Facilities Department this current year. And then, as you know, through careful planning, he'll share with you what he thinks is before us in the next several years, and then talk a little bit about the highlights for this year's budget. So turn things over to Alan.
Hi, good evening. So first on the list, the generator for the middle school. We do have that under contract to get done. We're running into some delays on that piece of equipment, but we're looking to aim to at least get everything prepped and ready during the summer. Hopefully we'll take a look at maybe other generators. We spec the Cummins generator, which we like. It's the same as a lot of the other brands we have here, but there are some other good companies out there, so we will probably take a look at maybe sourcing a different brand to get that in during the summertime. Continued upgrades to the middle school. We're looking at mostly the outer doorways, and we have a contractor for that, and that'll probably be commencing during the summertime. Again, we're watching supplies on that. It doesn't look like we'll be delayed, past the summer or anything on that. So we'll be commencing that during the summer. So I'll be taking care of the rest of the exterior doors on the middle school. We've done some, and this would be finishing up the rest of those. Not the glass doors, at the main entrance or the other entrance. Those would be the ones that we would not be touching yet. Middle school roof replacement. We're mostly done with that. Contractor still has to finish up some of the second coating to the roofing. He's finished with the first coating completely. So there's still a little bit more work to commence on there, but we're mostly done with that. Construction of the Mansfield Elementary School, where we have been, Bill and I both follow the construction meetings when they happen every other week. And also I am in the building committee meeting to keep track of all the updates on that also. So we're watching over what we can for the construction of the building, and we're also anticipating probably some help and some moves and things like that. So modernization study, we've done some work with Colliers on that, and we're continuing to look over things with them right now.
Yeah, I should give you an update also. I believe we've put that on the April agenda for the Board of Ed.
The next piece is just a look at the capital budget, the 5-year plan that I've had worked out, and I have some copies here to pass out. It's a little small.
They're the same. It's just one page. This used to be a multi-page packet, but we are down to a single page.
So what you see on there, there's a few things that I have in the potential column for year-end funds to continue. The things that could go a little longer if we needed to. And if we do get some year-end funds, then we will continue to tackle those. But the bigger one on there you see is for the lighting system in the auditorium at the middle school. Some other things in the outer years and quite a few larger projects that we're looking at to incorporate into the facility study and the past the 3-year mark there.
So this is something that you all should be really proud of. It was funny watching you pass these around because you're used to this being a really large packet. You know, we started these plans probably about 6 years ago, and at the time, we said we need to understand all the facility needs and we need to start to map this out. How are we going to begin to address all of these needs? And we have been able to chip away is probably the best word to describe it, but they've been big chips. We've been able to accomplish a tremendous amount. And you'll remember the presentation that Alan gave not too many months ago that showed you all of the upgrades to the middle school, for example, and just how much work has been done in that building. But before we knew we were changing our elementary configuration, we also were doing a fair amount of work at the elementary schools as well. And what's left, and this is why we entered into a modernization study, are big ticket items. You see a lot of projects that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, even more, left. And so before we go too much further into pay as you go, we thought we should embark on that modernization study. So kudos to the facilities department for getting all of this done. The generator project that Alan mentioned was a project that was funded through a capital request, and you can see in the upcoming year, we'll talk about this further, but in 22-23, there is only one item identified for attention at the middle school, and it happens to be a capital project. So I know Alan's going to share more with you about that.
Correct. As far as the lighting goes, there's some further slides, I think, that will give you some pictures of those.
Yeah, do you want to wait just a minute and talk first about the overall priorities, and then we'll get into those slides? Is that okay?
Sure. So for my department, in our budget, this will come out in the operating budget more. You'll see where I'm looking for the addition of a custodial supervisor. And for our department, for us, that means, and this would be a non-union position, so it'd be a salaried position. But for us, it would help free Bill and me up a little bit more. Bill's our assistant, if you don't know him, for the deputy director for our department. But it'd free the two of us up to work on some of these projects a little bit more. And just to give you an idea of what, when Bill and I get together with our maintenance department, and when we work on some of these, the middle school, like the bathrooms that we took on there, that was something that, as I figured for contracting that out, it was about $120,000. We did the work for $70,000 in-house. So we had about a $50,000 savings there. Likewise with the auditorium units, when we replaced those, we contracted the crane, we got those moved, we pulled them out. We were about $80,000. Our lowest bid was about $120,000 on those. So again, there's some good savings there, and as we continue, we can hopefully keep saving money, working forward. So this would be something that helps to free our time up a little bit to focus on some of those projects. There's definitely the big projects that definitely need the regular, professional services of the project manager, but there's these other little bit smaller projects that we could look at, and we can save the town some money on that.
And I'll just remind everybody that the facilities department is a shared service between us and the town of Mansfield. And so this maintenance department and the projects that Alan's speaking of are projects across all of the town buildings, not just the schools.
Correct.
And I'll remind you also that that means we are only responsible for 50% of the cost of the supervisor position.
Beyond that, we're also looking this year, as we're switching our staff around a little bit, is redesigning our custodial positions. Looking at trying to work with the pay rates of those a little bit also, and to balance that out a little bit better. So that's a part of our budget. In moving from the 3 schools that we have into the 1, we are reducing 2 full-time custodian positions. So that's another thing that you'll see in the operating budget.
And then the auditorium lighting. Here we go.
So in the auditorium lighting, right now, metal halide. So you're going to have some energy savings by what we're going to switch to. It'll probably be an LED kind of system, which is what is out there more as the most modern system. But like everything that gets put in, quite often they add a computer to it to control it, and these lights are controlled by a computer. So a big piece of that is also that computer board that drives this. That technology, though, is about 15 years old at least, and they don't make parts so much anymore to fix it. And just to get the house lights on, that was part of that system. We sort of did something to make the component work, but we don't really have a replacement part for it. So we're keep hoping that stays working the way it was meant to, but eventually we may have to do something on an emergency basis for that. But the rest of these pictures are the one on these are the lightings that are there. So there's quite a few lights involved in this change out. All those there on the tracks, they all have to be replaced in there. So that's the total of everything. And these here, you want me to go into this too, or?
Sure.
So in my operating budget, which is on page page 80. For those categories, the building repairs, equipment repairs, and so on, the total of all those deductions from going from the 3 buildings we have now to a 1 building, which is roughly the size. It's a little smaller than the middle school currently, but roughly the same size. So I'm sort of figuring the operation's going to be roughly about the same there. So that deduction for those is $68,000. And then the energy savings, again, hopefully this building, as it's designed, is going to be energy neutral. So we won't be spending so much money there, but we were spending it at the 3 elementary schools. And that is your energy savings there. And that's for the oil, gas, and electricity.
And I think some of those energy savings might also include expected reductions at the middle school because of the installation of PV. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Did we used to have a contract with the fuel supplier? And if we're using less, is that going to change our contractual obligations with this company?
No, every year we review that and we sort of look ahead, and we're anticipating some of that loss. So in anticipating that, we then negotiate a price based on what our anticipated needs are going to be for that year.
Okay, so it's a yearly thing. It's not a 3-year
No,
contract. Thank you.
it's a yearly.
Okay, I'll invite Alan to come back in a few minutes when we go through page by page, but I want to invite Jamie up to give you the highlights and the high overview of the technology budget. And we've got quite a bit going on there as well.
Thank you, everyone.
So each year, as we do with all of our principals, we ask Jamie to come before Charmaine and I to present a proposed budget, and we go through the same process that we go through with our building administrators, asking him to look at his expenditures from the last 3 years and consider the goals of the schools in the district and what we're hearing from staff as he thinks about how to properly outfit and equip staffing wise the schools for all of the technology needs that we have. And as you've heard, one of the things that we're looking at with this budget is the proposal of moving the technology integrationist position out of grants and into the budget itself. And so we'll start there.
Sure. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and appreciate the opportunity to be the public face of what took a lot of individuals, a lot of work and contributions towards. So thank you to everyone who provided input on this. The first bullet point here, I'll be honest with you, is the one I'm most excited about. As you may recall, this is the second school year of the technology integration position, and we have been so very pleased with it, and that's why we're proposing to make it a permanent part of the budget. I would be remiss if I didn't start out publicly commending Karen Lefebvre, who served in the position last year, and Louis Gaffanetti, who is currently in the position. The two of them have done so much to improve our integration of technology into learning and instruction, and really have proven the value of this position, and wanted to thank them both. I did want to take a moment to kind of share with you what this position looks like and kind of give you a little bit of a window into what I feel fortunate to get to see on a daily basis. So the position is driven by the needs of the people it works with, which includes faculty and staff, administrators, students, and families. It's kind of a unique position in that it works directly with all of those individuals on a regular basis. So first, the position is highly in demand, providing direct support to faculty and staff, and the requests are quite frequent. This has been especially true supporting faculty and staff with some of our big student-facing platforms, things like Google Classroom and Seesaw, our synchronous learning, which we had more of last year, but we still continue to have some of it with quarantining, originally Zoom and now Google Meet, and all kinds of special projects and needs. Some of those in the classroom, some of them after school, some of them even most recently at one of our basketball games. The support looks like a couple of different ways in terms of how you see it. Some of it is one-on-one with individuals, and sometimes it's particular needs, and that can be highly effective, but oftentimes it's also groups of teachers. You see it inside the classroom, you see it in planning meetings, and even you see it a lot just the informal hallway time. You know, when students at the elementary level are going to specials, or at the middle school when they're changing classrooms, sometimes just a couple minutes of just-in-time support is really powerful. Additionally, in addition to directly with individuals, great deal of materials that are focused, helpful, and customized to what our schools and teachers need for on-demand support materials. Sometimes teachers want an individual to work with them, but sometimes they just want to know the resources available that walks them through how to use something that isn't generic in a national sense, but really fits the kind of stuff we have in our classroom. And I think that has been the power of the position for staff, that they know that what that position is focused on is what's relevant and needed for them now. It's not a theoretical, but it's something they can use next period or the next day or that week. I also wanted to mention that in addition to teachers, which is the bulk of the work, it also often works with our paraeducators, our secretaries, our administrators, custodians. Everybody gets a piece of it. The second major area of focus is, of course, students. The position does interact directly with students frequently. Sometimes that's in whole classrooms. Some examples are digital portfolios and Google Slides, co-planning new initiatives like the stock market, or sometimes it's smaller groups of students with specialized topics, things like our elementary school STEM program, some of our iPad video work, the Changemaker video displays at the middle school. It really is amazing to get to see some of the things that our kids are doing at both the elementary and middle level. And this position gets the opportunity to kind of work with some of the most creative aspects of that. The third area of focus that I mentioned is whole school items. It has been a part of the implementation of a number of initiatives overall in our schools. Just to name a few, it's played a huge part in our move to one-to-one devices, with students taking home devices in grades K through 8, integral to that success. It's been involved in data usage, things both at the school level and the district level. And also, particularly this year, we've been involved in a lot of activities around student appropriate use guidance. As now kids are in school every day, they have their one-to-one devices, and talking about what that needs to look like from an appropriate sense. And then finally, wanted to mention that the position gets to interact directly with our families. It supports and promotes usage of a number of tools that we make available to families, because it's one thing to purchase and make them available. If families aren't aware or don't see the benefit or aren't comfortable using it, it's not a success. This position has taken the point in promoting our PowerSchool parent portal, our learning platforms, including Google Classroom and Seesaw, and many of our web-based resources. And additionally, often connects directly with individual families. There have been countless times where we know there's a child that either is struggling with how to manage appropriate technology use, which sometimes is a how-to, but frankly, sometimes it's overuse and maybe needs to take a break. This individual gets to connect with families and provide that support using a whole host of tools that best match our families. Sometimes it's email, sometimes it's a quick phone call, sometimes it's a Google Meet where they virtually connect. So it really has been real powerful, and excited about the idea of continuing that position into next year.
I just want to say,
Yes.
Jamie, I can't think of a better way to spend some money. This seems like we really have needed this, and it's terrific.
Oh, well, thank
Thank
you
you.
for your support. Appreciate that.
Can I just ask a logistics question? It sounds like
Absolutely.
there's so many things that the position supports. How do they structure? Is it a couple days a week at their time? Like, is it a couple days per building, or is it moving around all the time, or?
Yeah, so I can speak to it. In a typical day, it is not uncommon for the position to be in more than one school. So we didn't structure it necessarily that today's a middle school day versus today's an elementary day. It's very uncommon that it would be all 4 schools, but in a typical day, it's usually a couple. Honestly, it's often driven by where the need is. Sometimes it's initiatives we have, but a lot of it's just based on where the requests are. So. All right.
Okay. Do you want to mention a couple of the other highlights?
Yeah, I'll mention some of the other ones, far less exciting, but still good. We continue our one-to-one program, as you know. That continues to be successful. Partly to provide continued COVID support as needed when students are quarantining, but also just a major equity move. The fact that all kids K through 8 are using the same devices, not only in school, but outside of school, at home, I think really has upped the game in terms of a child's experience and acquiring not only those technology skills, but also having access to resources. And then I did want to mention, you're going to notice in the budget book, there are not major changes in the budget, but there are a few items. We've been finding with our student devices, we were doing maintenance contracts on those. That has just not become cost effective. And so we've moved to repairing them in-house. So things that come up is, obviously we encourage everyone to treat the devices well, but sometimes the device might fall, a screen cracks, a keyboard has issues. We found it just made more sense to repair those in-house. So we removed the contract costs, and we moved some of those costs to a repair line for parts, but overall it is a decrease in cost. And then finally, I was going to mention that you're going to see there is some educational equipment reduction. Most of that is due to moving into the new building. There are some things that will come with that building that we would have otherwise had to replace. However, the savings there is offset by the fact that our subscription services, largely due to inflation, honestly, we've seen some price increases, so we've reflected that there. Is there a question? Yeah.
You just mentioned equipment. And I was wondering, in the 3 buildings, there are closets full of wires
Yes.
and all kinds of equipment. What happens to all of that? I mean, can any of it be used or reused, or
Yeah,
probably-
so I can speak to that. Anticipating that this was coming, for a number of years now, we've been trying to be real careful only to replace things in those buildings if we need to. Obviously, not compromising the instruction or the systems there, but we've been trying to design things for end of life to the degree which we can. So some things are end of life, and that'll be okay. There are some things that we're going to move. The state rules around building projects, there are some technologies they'll pay for, but there are a lot of things they won't. And so a lot of that stuff will physically come with us. And in a few cases, there's stuff that matches things we have at the middle school, so we'll move it to the middle school.
Thank you.
Jamie, was this a position, oh, I'm sorry, Edith. Was this a position that you just came up with, or is there a model for this out there?
The technology integration is positioned. It'd be nice if we could claim credit for
Ah,
it,
darn.
but unfortunately not. Or though perhaps fortunately, there are a lot of districts that do have this position. A couple of we've talked about it at times, or the concept has come up, and we did. You may be familiar with our curriculum teams. They do a little bit of that work, but in a real small sense. We've had teachers at times who just were really excelled at it and had a heart for it, and they did a little bit of it. Again, not compensated, but just in addition to their teaching. And so we saw pieces of it, but with the start of COVID, really the need was tremendous, and there was an opportunity for the grant funding, and that was really the impetus. But there are a number of other districts that do this as well.
No, it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I think it is.
So, you've taken on completing in-house repairs for well over 1,000 individual units. You don't have a huge staff. How are you integrating that amount of work?
Yeah. So what we were doing before in terms of maintenance contracts did still require some work, because before we could send it in, we had to do analysis, you had to box it up, you had to manage the coming back. So we've gained some of that labor back. We have been trying to work hard with kids on making good choices. We've been fortunate in that both our school offices and particularly the middle school library has just been tremendous in helping us manage some of the flows. Just the nature of middle school is such as that's where you see more of the repairs. And the library has really been a huge help to us in that they're the place kids go to with the device. They're doing some initial triaging for us now. And so that's been a help. And just encouraging faculty. So we'll say how we've sort of managed it is partly because it's been a real team process. That being said, I would be remiss. We have a couple of IT folks who spend a lot of time doing that work, and they make it possible. And so kudos to them.
We also have protective covers on a lot of our devices.
That is correct. That's an
Trying to
excellent
do
point.
some things to reduce
Yeah.
the need.
Yeah. We use these hardened shells that really go a long way on both the iPads and the Chromebooks.
And
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just the same as with Alan. Greatly appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to do the work in-house to look at savings. That's really commendable. Be much easier if you not do that, but really, we really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying so. Yeah. And since we're publicly recognizing people, I should recognize the two individuals who've done the bulk of that are Tom Pomeroy and Jamie Riopel. So thanks to both of them for countless hours of doing that. And they've gotten quite good at it. So.
and this last slide here relates to the capital improvement budget. You know that every year we make a request out of the capital funding to support the work of everything that the technology department does to provide both the infrastructure and the devices for students. And so Jamie has some nice highlights here about how that $150,000 is used.
Yeah. So we're not proposing an increase this year. It's going to continue at the same level. As you can see, I won't read all the bullet points, but basically what this is used for is it kind of addresses the fact that a lot of the technology we use in the classroom eventually has to cycle out. There's a replacement cycle, but a lot of it is just changes in what the technology is. As you can see, based on some of the highlights and the focus for next year, it's not so much stuff that's in the walls. That stuff tends to be permanent. It's more the things that get used. This year we had at the middle school a number of our interactive display panels. Probably heard them. They're called smart boards or smart ones. A lot of those had to get replaced because they just reached end of life. We've seen a lot of increase in use of bandwidth. So you can see next year kind of expanding what we can handle in the wireless and wired network. And also a lot of it's cybersecurity piece. And then a biggest piece as reflected up there is just that classroom equipment, stuff that gets used and may typically have about a 5 to 6 year lifespan and then eventually needs to be replaced.
Great. So, Alan, if I could ask you to come back up, I'm going to walk us through the district management accounts now. And again, these accounts include general instruction, including these 3 positions. I'll show you where that is in your budget. Professional improvement, as I mentioned before, Board of Ed and Superintendent's Office, where you're going to see just a few changes. Our transportation contract, as well as the increase in transportation for those midday runs for the new school next year, and then some of our benefits. So if you want to open to tab 4, we're going to start on page 74. And the thing that I want to mention here is that under this general instruction line here, you see the very first line, classroom instruction certified. That's where you'll find the increase for any certified district employee who has a salary increase, as well as a couple of those new positions. So the technology integrationist position is there, the additional psychology position is there. What you won't find there is the custodial position, because that's not a certified position, right? So these are the certified positions only. And those that serve the entire district. Moving on to page 75, that's the computer education page. And Jamie, I don't know if you have any other highlights to offer there.
The changes we'd reference in the slides. Beyond that, on those pages, we tried to capture within the space some of the highlights of the present year, objectives for the coming year, and then again, the explanation on where you see some changes in the lines.
Question?
Yeah, in the narrative here, you mentioned cybersecurity. Is there anything you can let us know? It must be a tremendous concern.
Yeah, it is. That has been, I don't know if this is a euphemistic way to put it, but it's been a growth area for us. The number of threats that are out there are significant. What we are continually adding on is both actual systems, both hardware and software, to protect against that, filter things out, and so forth. But the other component's kind of the people component, trying to work with folks to educate them about what to watch out for and such. Obviously, our concern is, we have a lot of data, both student and staff data, and we don't want anyone else to get a hold of it. And we also want all of that equipment to work. So we have a real robust system for keeping things out, but also safeguards that in the event something happened, we would know, could act appropriately, and would not be in a position where we would lose any data.
Thank you, because I'm always concerned about that and ransomware and all of that. I just think it's a major headache.
I agree. It's huge, and I'm sure you all have seen it, certainly in the news. And schools are absolutely, potential vectors for that. So we're always trying to both safeguard, but also, example of ransomware, make sure that everything is backed up multiple ways. So if something did happen, we wouldn't be in a position where we would lose access to data. We do things like keep a lot of stuff off network at intervals and kind of keep it protected. But yeah, I agree. That is also something that we focus a lot on.
Okay, moving on to page 76. That's the professional improvement line. Monies for professional learning, both internal and external. And there are no changes in that line this year. Page 77 is the Board of Education, a variety of lines that support the operation of the board, as well as some of your contractual obligations to employees. And page 78 is the superintendent's office. Again, lots of things that support just the operations of running the school system. And again, all those lines are intended just to keep our operations at current levels. Page 70. I'm sorry, was there a question? Oh,
Just a quick one. On page
Yep.
76, the second line item is
76, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, yes, please. Before we move too far along, team leader still proposed at 72,500. With the condensation, are we still going to need as many team leaders?
So we've started that conversation, but it's part of the transition work that we're doing. It's possible that we may not use as many of them. But at this point in time, we didn't have a decision to be able to make a reduction. So we are up to page 79, which is the business management account. That account is primarily for our shared services. And again, what you see reflected there is just to maintain services that we have. Page 80, those are all of the accounts that Alan was referring to earlier with regards to plant operations, all of the energy accounts. And again, if you have any specific questions on that page, Alan is there to respond to them. Page 81 is our transportation page. You will not see special education transportation listed here, but this is the general education transportation. And as I mentioned on this slide, we have a 3.3% increase in our contract and a slight increase, I think it was about $54,000, if I'm remembering correctly, for the cost of adding midday runs due to the new school, which is much less. We really thought we might have to add full runs, and we do not need to add full runs, which is great. And on page 82, you'll see employee benefits. And medical insurance this year is expected to increase 7.8%. And I'd like to share with you this slide because you'll remember some years ago, we moved all of our contracts over to the high deductible healthcare savings plan in the hopes that it would save us money, and not just the hopes, but I told you from my past experience it would. And so we've been tracking that every year. And so you can see in that first expenditure column the actual cost in our budget to provide medical insurance to all of our employees. And you can see that since 2017, it is still, or I should say what we were paying in 2017 before we had everybody all moved over, is still more than 6 years later. We are not paying as much, and that's with the increases. You know, it's expected that health insurance is going to go up every year, and so we've been able to really hold the lid on this, and that high deductible healthcare plan has certainly helped.
Thank you so much for doing this over time. It's super helpful. I know you do this for us for a lot of things, but this is really useful. Thank you.
Sure. And then the last page in district management is the transfers out page. And this is the page. I'm not sure I've got my slides in the right order for this one, guys. No, I do. Whoops, I did something wrong there. I'm on the wrong button. There we go. These are the programs that we provide funding to, or in some cases are programs that are revenue generating. You used to have a third other program, and that was the Suzuki program, because that was a revenue generating program that we operated as a sort of private-public partnership. And of course, as you know, that's now within the budget. So all we have left is paying for the services of the nurse, which is statutorily required at Oak Grove, and supporting when necessary the food service program. And you'll receive a full review and update on the activity of the food service program in April at our April board meeting. And I will remind you that this year that we are able to provide all meals to children for no cost through federal allowance. We don't know yet the status of that for the future. So that completes the district management accounts. Well, Jamie and Alan are here. I will bring up the capital fund requests again. As you heard Jamie mention, we will continue to request $150,000 to support our IT upgrades, maintenance, and continuing operations. And you may remember that for many years, we made a request of the capital fund to support general building maintenance, as well as special projects. We are requesting zero money this year from the town for any general building maintenance, and just the one request for the auditorium lighting at MMS. Are there any questions on anything you've heard, Jeanette?
I understand why there's not going to be building maintenance at the elementary level, but we also do not need building maintenance for the middle school. Is that because of the roofing programs and things like that?
Yeah, so that spreadsheet that was passed out to you, if you had been on the board a few years ago, you would have seen lots of figures in a lot of these columns and more lines. And what we've done is, in a very systematic way, addressed the maintenance needs on a pay-as-you-go, or some important capital funds as well, but those are still pay-as-you-go. And we've been able to take care of so many needs at the middle school that all we have left are these really big ticket items, and that's why we're doing the study. Yeah. Oh, so I have a couple of slides left. I got myself all out of order here. So the last thing I'd like to share with you is, again, just some high-level overview of the district management accounts. So there are some increases, as I've shared, in the certified salary line, but there are decreases in the non-certified salary line, and many of those, the non-certified, are due to the consolidation. So again, these are positions that we put in district management, like custodial positions and the library positions that served multiple schools. So the overall decrease in the district management accounts this year is 0.06. And other things that have helped us with that are some decrease in supply lines and in energy costs. And even with the extra costs for insurance and transportation, we've still got an overall decrease in these accounts. I mentioned that already, and I mentioned that. So, do you have any other questions for us? I think that is pretty much the entire budget book. Go ahead.
I just have a question on this chart of facility needs. Where it says priority 1 on the right, the next to last column, it's like $1 million worth, plus there are 3 lines of question marks: the demolition of the portables and the couple renovations. Is there a possibility, and I guess you probably won't know this until after the facility study is done, but that those would be added together, a unit that would be something that would be coming to referendum?
I think when you look at it's probably going to be the whole project to do at the middle school. So that would be a piece of it, but those figures will be getting filled in with the facility study. They will be doing some cost estimation for us also on that. So
There's a possibility that there would be a referendum that would have several items for the middle school. Thank
Correct.
you.
I think that the next steps for the middle school are going to be rather complex, because I think there will be multiple options before you on how to address the needs that are there. And some of those options will allow you to receive some reimbursement from the state where others will not. And we don't know how much of it will be eligible for reimbursement. So there are a lot of questions, and I think it's going to be a multi-month process that you're going to have to go through once we have the initial study findings.
Will this be a building committee situation where we will appoint another building committee?
If you seek state reimbursement, you will, yes. If you choose to do pay-as-you-go, you will not. Yeah. Are there any other questions about district management? Well, again, you now had a chance to go through the entire budget. At next week's regular board meeting, you'll be asked to take a vote on the budget. And yes. Okay.
Please repeat the question. The mic wasn't on.
I was asking about page 77 with the increase in certified salaries and wages.
Under Board of Education certified, are you looking?
Yes.
I believe that has to do with the Director of Teaching and Learning position, but that's not the whole salary, and nor is it the increase. So I'd have to ask Charmaine to do the research on that one for us, but I can do that.
Go ahead, Martha.
A brief description of Director of Teaching and Learning?
Yeah, we discussed that last week. So that's the addition of central office administrator to support all elements of the teaching and learning work in the district. I believe, let me just see if I did a separate slide on that last week.
Kelly, if you had copies of the slides from last week, I
Yeah.
would like to.
So it's described on slide 11 from your packet last week, and we discussed it, I think at that time.
We did.
Okay. Any other questions? It's good to have these in advance, so if there's anything else you're wondering about before you take a vote next week, feel free to reach out to us. We appreciate if we get the questions the day before, so it gives us a chance to be prepared at the meeting, but want to make sure all your questions are answered before you have to make a decision on the budget.
Congratulations, everybody. Excellent budget. As Dave said, I think last week, unbelievable that we're going into a new building. We have all these things that we need to do, and you've got a budget it's incredible. Thank you to all of you. Thoughtful work. Thank you.
Great. Good. Jamie and Alan, thank you very much. I have
Thank you,
nothing
guys.
else to share. I'll turn it over to you.
All righty then. Is there any further discussion about the budget? And just a reminder, as Kelly said, if you do have questions, it does make it a lot easier for these busy folks if you send it in beforehand. All right? Thank you very much, everyone. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. You have a question? Oh, motion to adjourn? Thank you, Jeanette. Do I have a second? Thank you, Dave. Anyone have